So one thing is clear from today is that we have a need for allies and partners. The topic of this discussion about multilateralism and the Indo-Pacific security environment. Just to set the stage, the growth of multilateral and minilateral security groupings in the Indo-Pacific has offered an opportunity to enhance alliance interoperability and networking while advancing mutual interests and addressing common challenges. We will explore the potential of these security groupings in the Indo-Pacific, the obstacle they face, and how successful management of these groupings will shape the future of the Indo-Pacific security environment. So with me today, it's a great honor to have two distinguished panelists here with us today. The first one, Consul General Eun-ji. She's the Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in Seattle since March of 2022. She has previously served as Director General of the 2021 Seoul United Nations Peacekeeping Ministerial Preparatory Secretariat, as well as Director General of the Bureau of Public Diplomacy and Cultural Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Consul General So has extensive careers and experience in the fields of public diplomacy, development cooperation, and disarmament. I also have with me Alison Szalwinski. She's the Vice President of Research at NBR. Ali provides executive leadership to NBR's policy research agenda and overseas research team in Seattle and Washington, D.C. She's the author of numerous articles and reports and co-editor of the Strategic Asia series, including the most recent volumes, Strategic Asia 2021-2022, Navigating Tumultuous Times in the Indo-Pacific. So I will, as in previous session, I will ask a few questions to both panelists as starter, but our discussion will be much richer if we can get a question from the audience as well. So this is a question to both panelists. How a recent shift in geopolitical alliances, such as the Quad security dialogue between Australia, Japan, India, and the United States, and the trilateral cooperation between the United States, the Republic of Korea, and Japan, reshaping security dynamics in the Indo-Pacific? General Consul?
Let me focus on the trilateral cooperation among the Korea, Japan, and the United States. The many people say that this, the meeting which was just held in August in Camp David, they described this meeting, as a pivotal moment that changed the geopolitics in the Indo-Pacific and ushered in a new era of cooperation. So actually, this, trilateral meeting was possible based on the improvement relationship between Korea and Japan, of course, and also it was the first time that the three countries that held a stand-alone summit in such a historic place as the Camp David. I'm gonna make some point for the most significant changes from bilateral to trilateral. First is the expansion of the concept of geopolitics. Actually, this trilateral cooperation has been expanded to the Indo-Pacific region. Before that, we only focused for the people of the bilateral countries, but now that we are committed to the benefit of the 5 billion people in Indo-Pacific region. Second, that this is a concept expansion of the deterrence. One of the tangible outcome for this trilateral meeting is about the increase of the deterrence, in particular North Korea. So with the emergence of the increasing North Korean threat to this region, actually the trilateral cooperation that make it clear that we're gonna share the real-time sharing of the North Korean missile warning information, and also that we agree to cooperate on the combating of the North Korean cyber terrorism, and also we agreed to the joint trilateral exercise in this region. And also the three countries are agreed on the denuclearization of the North Korea, and also we agree on the several they supported the Korea's the audacious initiatives and the unrepatriated prisoners of war or something like that. And third one, I wanna make it out the expansion of the concept of the security. Actually, we agreed that the security concept to the economic security. So for the three lateral countries, we account for the 30% of the global GNP, and also the three countries account for the 70% of the semiconductor manufacturing equipment, and also the American electric vehicles will be supplied by the batteries of the Korea and Japan up to 90% starting next year. That's why we call it the kind of the engine of world economy. So that's why we will lead the kind of the global supply chain. Also, we cooperate on the technological cooperation and also the financial stability as well. That's why those are another the accomplishment. And the fourth, we expand also the expansion of institutionalization. So one of the key point is that the institutionalization from the top levels to the working level. So from the leaders and defense ministers, foreign ministers, national advisors, we establish that kind of the communication mechanism in order to keep the institutionalization. Finally, the expansion of the scope of cooperation. Actually we cooperate from the development cooperation and also the policy dialogue on the global climate change and other the global issues, as well as we agree to the people-to-people exchange, in particular including among next generations. So the Korea will host the Global Youth Summit the next year in Busan. Those are all the expansion of the concept. That is a key point of the trilateral the cooperation this time. Thank you.
Wonderful. So the focus from the Consul General's remarks on the trilateral relationship offers me a great opportunity to focus a little bit on the Quad, which is the other kind of grouping that you mentioned between the US, Japan, Australia, and India. And I know the Quad has received a few mentions throughout our conversations here today. So it's a great opportunity for us to kind of build on some of those themes and pull out some of the threads. And I think it's interesting. The question you asked was how shifts in these kind of groupings and alliances are reshaping security dynamics in the region. And in the case of the Quad, I would actually argue that rather than reshaping security dynamics in the region, the evolution of the Quad over the past 5 or so years has really been a reflection of, and I would say a direct response to, a rapidly shifting security environment around these 4 countries. So, from the origins of the Quad back in 2007 was a very kind of loose framework that didn't have a strong sense of purpose and didn't kind of fell apart after a few iterations, to then being resuscitated as a senior level dialogue in 2017, and then on to becoming what we are now seeing as a regular leader level summit where the leaders of the 4 countries are meeting on a regular basis. The Quad has really transformed in ways that I think few would have predicted, certainly not back in 2007, and even when it was kind of revived 10 years later. And I think there's a lot of significant promise for the grouping to evolve in the next decade to come. And a large part of that, again, is because of the shifts that have occurred around these 4 countries and how they are perceiving their security environment today. So the 4 leaders met most recently at their kind of leader summit this past May. And during that, after they had their meetings, they released a joint statement in which they reiterated the Quad's commitment to, quote, strongly oppose destabilizing or unilateral actions that seek to change the status quo by force or coercion. So that's a clear reference to China. And that language is something that has appeared in a few of the past summits and readouts from meetings. But then this year's statement went a step further to say also, we express serious concern at the militarization of disputed features, the dangerous use of Coast Guard and maritime militia vessels, and efforts to disrupt other countries' offshore resource exploitation activities. So we're seeing, even as the Quad continues to work in a range of cooperative ways, some of which lay kind of outside the security realm, that there is kind of an increasingly shared sense of threat perception from these four countries and concerns about the Indo-Pacific security environment. Of course, there are limitations to that, and we can get into maybe some of those in a few minutes. But I think that's kind of what we're seeing in terms of what has brought the Quad together to this date so far.
Right. I have a follow-up question to that. So I believe in 2020 or 2019, we talked about Quad Plus with Vietnam, New Zealand, and South Korea. Do you think that's going to be expanded, or is that just going to stay the way it is?
So the Quad Plus is a really interesting opportunity, and I think it's something that will certainly continue because it's a great use of the flexibility of these kind of minilateral groupings. That we have kind of a core set of countries that have some shared interests, and on discrete issues, issue sets, other countries might join to cooperate and collaborate and work on issues. So the countries you mentioned are great examples. South Korea is a really perfect example of this. There's a lot of ways that as Korea has shown a greater interest in participating and leading as a global and regional actor, that it can cooperate with the Quad on specific issues that the ROK sees as in its interest. And likewise, Singapore has done similar, made similar efforts and taken specific steps to do working group meetings on mostly maritime related issues for Singapore's case. And there's other areas like public health. There are other partners might come to join the working group efforts that these kind of core four countries will always be there, and then we can kind of bring in and loop in other states as it makes sense for their interests.
Great, thank you. So how effective are these alliances in addressing shared security concerns and promoting regional stability?
Yeah, as I already explained, I think in terms of the South Korea, I think this alliance is very useful for the deterring the North Korea against North Korea. So this time the three countries already speak out for the support for the denuclearization of the DPRK, and also the working on the human rights issues of North Korea. And also to cut off the North Korean's funding stream, we agreed to cooperate on the kind of the cyber, the terrorism group, and also those things actually I think really the efficient in the deterrence terms, include beyond the North Korea issues. Also, the trilateral cooperation is committed to any attempt to change the status quo in the Indo-Pacific waters, including the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea. That's why this cooperation mechanism is a very fit for the kind of the deterrence.
Ali?
Yeah, I would say for the Quad, which has really made a concerted attempt to portray itself and make progress on a number of issue areas that lie outside of traditional security. in the realm of kind of traditional security issues, there still has been a number of areas that the Quad has made some contributions and progress and has been shown to be an effective kind of grouping of states. You know, one of the key benefits of organizing and cooperating together with the set of 4 countries is that it allows this grouping to really leverage the strengths of each of the partners and to lean on their credibility in their various subregions. And so we saw this during the COVID-19 pandemic, when there was a significant focus on public health and vaccine programs, where you know, India has a strong presence as a leader in South Asia and is able to kind of act as the Quad's kind of voice on issues that are relevant to those actors. We see, you know, Japan and Australia also having other countries where they have historically strong relationships and are able to kind of bring strengths to bear on maritime security issues. North Korea, Taiwan, or other kind of hard security issues that the Quad has at least made statements on in the past. That being said, I would say there definitely are some potential challenges and ways that the Quad is a little bit limited in its effectiveness in achieving kind of regional security goals. The first is something that I think is often raised as a limitation of the Quad, and something that was a pitfall of the Quad in its original conception back in 2007, which is the potential for divergences in individual threat perceptions or national interests of any one of these 4 countries to kind of dilute the grouping's ability to cooperate on other issues. And so the key example, or an example of this, would be in the case of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. There was, especially in the early days at the outset, concern that India's position on Russia's invasion of Ukraine was going to be a major challenge for Quad unity. And, you know, Australia, the United States, and Japan unequivocally came out to condemn Russia's actions, especially at the UN. India consistently stood apart. It did make statements about some of the negative consequences of what was going on in Ukraine, but never, especially in UN voting, it would abstain from the votes that were called to condemn Russian aggression. So there was some concern that this would then again be an issue for the Quad when they gathered, but I think that we've seen in the year plus since then that there's been some really careful navigation by the other 3 partners, not to make this an issue that will rise to the level of, you know, of forcing other ways that the 4 countries can cooperate to be pushed to the side. You know, they have allowed India a little bit of space to have, you know, it has a different set of historical ties to Russia, a different set of national interests, and kind of acknowledging that, moved on to focus on other things without pushing India too hard. So there still may be other instances or examples where kind of this type of division will undermine or has the potential to undermine the Quad's ability to be effective. But thus far, I think in this particular case, the more recent case, we haven't seen that be as big an issue as maybe some thought it might be. And then I would just raise one other challenge that I think is you know, really salient for us to kind of grapple with now, which is the potential for domestic issues, really in any of the 4 countries, but in particular for the United States, to kind of overshadow or, again, undermine opportunities for cooperation. And so what I mean by this is, as the United States kind of political dysfunction plays out, it undermines our credibility in the region, and it often has direct results in terms of our ability to kind of show up and achieve the things we want to do. Back in May, when the four leaders were scheduled to have their annual leader summit in Australia. Biden was going to make a trip through the Indo-Pacific region, attending the G7 in Japan, and then going to Australia for the Quad summit. And because of the issues with the debt ceiling negotiations, he canceled his trip to Australia. They still ended up having this summit on the sidelines of the G7 in Japan, so they were able to make it work. But in terms of optics and credibility, it definitely, in a region where the United States will always struggle with, just showing up and being present. This type of kind of domestic dysfunction can undermine our ability to kind of have credibility and get the things done that we need to get done. So in particular, it is true for many of the groupings, for ASEAN, for other stakeholders and bilateral relationships, but for the Quad, we saw this kind of play out most recently back in May.
Great. So, difference aside, in what ways can existing security grouping be strengthened or enhance cooperation and coordination among countries?
Actually, the first one, the most important thing is to find out the common, the threat, kind of, find a common vision and goals, a particular common threat. So in this case, yeah, we know what is the common threat. Like in particular for Korea, as I told you already, the North Korean issues is the most priority issues for us. And second one is the institutionalization. Even though we agreed, but it is not the institutionalized as soon as possible. We just the facing kind of the regime change. The next year, the U.S. also face kind of the election, and also Japan and Korea as well. So that's why the institutionalization is very important. It's from top level to the working level. So as soon as possible, sooner than later. So that is one point. And also the leaders, this time, actually, our President Yoon Suk-yeol and the Prime Minister Kishida was awarded the College Award by the John F. Kennedy Foundation. So in this case, the leaders, the resolution and the willingness to keep that kind of the alliance is very, very important. And also I want to check out. Yeah, those things. Yeah, the common the vision, and also the institutionalization and the leaders, the willingness, and also the lastly the interconnectedness. Nowadays the security concept is not limited to the only security. Actually we are talking about much more about the economic security, and also the global issues and the developed cooperation issues. That kind of the scope of cooperation. The more connected we can keep this alliance more safe and secure. Thank you.
Ali, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think in terms of strengthening or maybe moving forward opportunities for enhanced security cooperation for the Quad, because again, the Quad has seen a lot of success in putting forward kind of an affirmative vision, not a kind of anti-countering narrative, but an affirmative vision for cooperation in the region. While also at the same time, of course, being informed by security activities and events taking place in the region. And the space that kind of the Quad has the most runway to continue to grow and I think take additional steps, both in terms of the grouping the four countries together, but also in any one of the kind of legs of that square, bilaterally or in other parts, trilateral arrangements, I think there's a lot of room on the Taiwan question. So the four countries have been, they each sit at a different place along the spectrum of support for and in their relationship with Taiwan, which again is based on their own national interest and their own historical ties and triangulation of their relationship with China. But as a grouping, they've taken, kind of baby steps towards mentioning Taiwan, incorporating Taiwan into statements, leader statements. And this is an area in particular where the evolution and movement of a few of the Quad partners towards strengthening relations with Taiwan. We just heard how kind of Japan-Taiwan ties have evolved and have strengthened. That Japan's role as a leader in the region and its growing relationship with India in particular. So Japan and India's cooperative relationship is strengthening. That Japan's in a really nice position to kind of push this issue forward in a way that doesn't put the United States kind of as the bully on the issue, to say that it's in our shared interests, these four countries, to make a statement that Taiwan's security is in the interest of regional security. We've heard versions of this from multiple Japanese leaders, that Taiwan security is Japan's security. And I think this can be continued and hold true for the Quad, that regional stability and upholding the international order is all strengthened by these four countries showing resolve and showing support for Taiwan. Because that sends a signal to China that it's not just the United States, it's not just maybe Japan sometimes or Australia sometimes. When these four countries get together and say something collectively, that really makes Beijing's ears perk up and has an effect. So I think there's some space there. I don't think it'll move very rapidly, but it's an area definitely for potential additional cooperation.
Great, thank you. Roy, you have a question?
I do. Can I ask?
Yes, absolutely.
I hope I don't interrupt. I actually have a question as we think about shifting multilateral arrangements. Actually, I have a question about Vietnam. And with apologies to my distinguished colleague, Ali, and to our distinguished Consul General CO, Admiral Nguyen, I'd like to ask it of you. Vietnam is the land of your birth. You immigrated to the United States and are a retired Rear Admiral in the United States Navy. But you, in our discussions, it seems to me, retain a keen interest in Vietnam. You've traveled there not so very long ago. President Biden just was on a recent trip to Vietnam and declared a new level in our relationship. It was actually the first state visit of an American president to the country of Vietnam. And yet Vietnam lives in a very complicated geography, right? It shares land and maritime borders with China, for instance. Are there limits from your perspective to how a new and emerging relationship between the United States, a bilateral relationship between the United States and Vietnam, or Vietnam within maybe some of the constructs that we've been talking about, is particularly the Quad? You mentioned it earlier, but how do you speculate? How do you think about the possibilities or the prospects or the limits to what this relationship might result in?
Thank you for the question, Roy. So appreciate that. I hope that there's no limit in terms of expanding the relationship between the two countries, right? I think with recently Vietnam elevated the relationship between Vietnam, U.S. to comprehensive strategic partnership. I think is a message to China about its independence. You are hoping that they're going to leverage this relationship to at least cooperate and working different arrangement to a degree that send a message to China that, hey, in my corner, I have the USA here that could help me with with your aggressive stance in the South China Sea. The U.S. is also considering selling F-16 and other weapons to Vietnam at this point, which is unheard of before. And I think that also going to help Vietnam I guess, drawing away Vietnam from China's influence, if you will. That doesn't mean that the relationship between the two communist party, between the CCP and the VCP had changed. It's just saying that, hey, look, Vietnam in their own interests, I think they're gonna want to break away from the chokehold of China. And again, I think these are just baby steps, but in the future, I'm hoping that that relationship will expand. Is going to be, we need all the airlines. We, the U.S., need all the airlines that we can get in that region, whether through economic expansion, whether through economic cooperation, or perhaps potentially some military cooperation as well. So that's just a hope, and I think that we are taking the right step in the right direction.
Can I add something? So, as a diplomat who lived in Vietnam, as a consul in Korean embassy in Vietnam, Hanoi, it was actually 10 years ago, from the 2008 2011. It's a little bit long time ago, but I fully agree with the Admiral Nguyen's idea, and also I have some the suspicion of that because the political system, it cannot be changed in a day. When I see the Vietnam, it was just a miniature of China. So the China, in economy, they the pursuit of the capitalism, but in politics, they keeping their own the communism, the socialism system. I think it's the same with the Vietnam. In terms of the economy, there is no limit, but in terms of politics, I'm not so sure. So and also the Vietnam is a developing, but it is not yet the fully rule-based economy. It is not yet, about the rule-based society. Is not yet. So that's why it's a little bit, a way to go. Yes, with the full, the relationship with the United States. So that's why, I have positive, but that kind of the political system, it has a kind of some limit for the two country relationship. Yeah.
Thank you.